Well, good morning and welcome to Tuesdays with the Pilgrim as we continue reading Harold Bell Wright's book, The Shepherd of the Hills, with chapter 27, The Champion. A big wagon with 2 men on the seat appeared coming down the valley road. It was Wash Gibbs and a crony of his from the river. They had stopped at the distillery on their way and were just enough under the influence of drink to be funny and reckless. When they caught sight of Ollie Stewart and Miss Lane, Wash said something to his companion, at which both laughed uproariously. Upon reaching the couple, the wagon came to a stop, and after looking at Ollie for some moments with the silent gravity of an owl, Gibbs turned to the young lady.
"Howdy, honey. Where did you get that there? Did your pa give it to you for a doll baby?"
Young Stewart's face grew scarlet, and he said nothing.
"Can't it talk?"
continued Gibbs with mock interest. Glancing at her frightened escort, the girl replied,
"You drive on, Wash Gibbs. You're in no condition to talk to anybody."
An ugly leer came over the brutal face of the giant.
"Oh, I ain't I? You think I'm drunk? I ain't. Not so mighty drunk, just enough to perten me up a pepper grain."
Then turning to his companion, who was grinning in appreciation of the scene, he continued,
"Here, Bill, you hold the ribbons and watch me attend to that little job I told you I had laid out to do first chance I got."
At this, Ollie grew pale as death. Once he started as if to escape, but could not do so under Sammy's eyes. As Wash was climbing down from the wagon, he caught sight of young Matt standing in the door of the mill.
"Hello, Matt," he called cheerfully. "I ain't looking for you today. Tend to you some other time. Got more important business just now."
Young Matt made no reply, nor did he move to interfere. In the backwood, every man must fight his own battles, as long as he fights them with men. When Stewart was in danger from the panther, that was different. This was man to man. Sammy, too, reared in the mountains, and knowing the code, waited quietly to see what her lover would do. Coming to Ollie's side, Gibbs said, "Get down, young fellow, and look at your saddle."
"You go on, let me alone, Wash Gibbs. I'll never hurt you."
Ollie's naturally high-pitched voice was shrill with fear. Wash paused, looking back at his companion in the wagon, then to young Matt, then to the girl on the horse.
"That's right,"
shaking his head with ponderous gravity.
"You all heard him. He ain't never hurted me nary a bit, ladies and gentlemen. But good Lord, look at him. Ain't it awful?"
Suddenly he reached out a great arm and jerked the young man down from his horse, catching him with the other hand as he fell and setting him on his feet in the middle of the road. Ollie was like a child in the grasp of this huge tormentor, and in spite of her indignation, a look of admiration flashed over Sammy's face at the exhibition of the bully's powerful physical strength. An admiration that only heightened the feeling of shame for her lover's weakness. Gibbs addressed his victim.
"Now, Dolly, you and me, we're going to play a little. Come on, let's see you dance."
The other struggled feebly a moment and then attempted to draw a pistol, whereupon Wash promptly captured the weapon, remarking in sad tone as he did so,
"You hadn't oughtn't to tote such a gun as that, little sonny. It might go off. It's a right pretty little thing, ain't it?"
He continued, holding his victim with one hand and examining the pearl-handled, nickel-plated weapon with great interest.
"It sure is. But say, Dolly, if you was ever to shoot me with that there and I found hit out, I'd sure be powerful mad. You hear me now? And don't you go packing no gun no more, not in these mountains. It ain't safe."
The fellow in the wagon roared with delight at these witticisms and looked from young Matt to Sammy to see if they also appreciated the joke.
"Got any more praise?"
asked Gibb of his victim.
"No? Let's see."
Catching the young man by the wrist, he lifted him bodily, and then holding him head downwards, shook him roughly. Again, Sammy felt her blood tingle at the feat of strength. Next, holding Ollie with one huge hand at the back of his neck, Wash said, "See that fellow in the wagon there? He's a mighty fine gentleman, a friend of mine. Make a bow to him." As he finished with his free hand, he struck the young man a sharp blow in the stomach, with the result that Stuart did make a bow, very low, but rather too suddenly to be graceful. The fellow in the wagon jumped up and bowed again and again. "Howdy, Mr. City Man, and mighty proud to meet ya. Mighty proud, you bet." The giant whirled his captive toward the mill. "See that fellow yonder? I'm a-going to lick him some day. Make a face at him." Catching Ollie by the nose and chin, he tried to force his bidding, while the man in the wagon made the valley ring with his laughter. Then Wash suddenly faced the helpless young man toward Sammy. "Now, ladies and gentlemen," he said in the tones of a showman addressing his audience, "this here pretty little feller from the city's a-gonna show us hillbillies how to spark a gal." The bully's friend applauded loudly, roaring at the top of his voice, "Marry him, Wash, marry him! You can do it better than a parson. You'd make a good parson. Let's see how you go at it." The notion tickled the fancy of the giant, for it offered a way to make Sammy share in the humiliation more fully. "Get down and come here, honey," he said to the girl. "Get down, I say," he repeated when the young woman made no motion to obey. "Indeed I will not," replied Sammy shortly. Her tone and manner angered Gibbs, and dropping Ollie, he started toward the girl to take her from the horse by force. As he reached the pony's side, Sammy raised her whip, and with all her strength struck him full across the face. The big ruffian drew back with a bellow of pain and anger. Then he started towards her again. "I'll tame you, you wildcat!" he yelled, and Sammy raised her whip again. But before Gibbs could touch the girl, a powerful hand caught him by the shoulder. "I reckon you've had enough fun, Wash Gibbs," remarked young Matt in his slow way. "I ain't interfering between man and man, but you'd best keep your dirty hands off the lady." The young woman's heart leapt at the sound of the deep, calm voice that carried such a suggestion of power, and she saw that the blue eyes under the tumbled red-brown locks were shining now like points of polished steel. The strong man's soul was rejoicing with the fierce joy of battle. The big bully drew back a step and glared at the man who had come between him and his victim, the man whom, for every reason, he hated. Lifting his huge paws, he said in a voice hoarse with deadly menace, "Dirty, be they? Why, hell, I'll wash 'em, and it won't be water that'll clean 'em, neither. Don't you know that no man ever crosses my trail and lives?" The other returned easily. "Oh, shucks. Get into your wagon and drive on. You ain't on Rourke now, you're on Fall Creek, and over here you ain't no bigger than nobody else." While young Matt was speaking, Gibbs backed slowly away, and as the young man finished, suddenly drew the pistol he had taken from Ollie. With a quickness and lightness astonishing it in one of his bulk and unusually slow movements, the mountaineer leapt on his big enemy. There was a short, sharp struggle, and Wash staggered backwards, leaving the shining weapon in young Matt's hand. "It might go off, you know," said the young fellow quietly, as he tossed the gun on the ground at Ollie's feet. With a mad roar, Gibbs recovered himself and rushed at his opponent. It was a terrific struggle, not the skillful sparring of trained fighters, but the rough-and-tumble battling of primitive giants. It was the climax of long months of hatred, the meeting of two who were by every instinct mortal enemies. Ollie shrank back in terror, but Sammy leaned forward in the saddle, her beautiful figure tense, her lips parted, and her face flushed with excitement. It was soon evident that the big champion of the hills had at last met his match. As he realized this, a look of devilish cunning crept into the animal face of Gibbs, and he maneuvered carefully to bring his enemy's back toward the wagon. Catching a look from his friend over young Matt's shoulder, the man in the wagon slipped quickly to the ground, and Sammy saw with horror a naked knife in his hand. She glanced towards Ollie appealingly, but that gentleman was helpless. The man with the knife began creeping cautiously toward the fighting men, keeping always behind young Matt. The young woman felt as though an iron band held her fast. She could not move. She could not speak. Then Gibbs went down, and the girl's scream rang out. "Behind you, Matt! Look, quick!" As he recovered his balance from the effort that had thrown Wash, young Matt heard her cry, saw the girl's look of horror, and her outstretched hand pointing. Like a flash he whirled, just as the knife was lifted high for the murderous blow. It was over in an instant. Sammy saw him catch the wrist of the uplifted arm, heard a dull snap and a groan, and saw the knife fall from the helpless hand. Then she saw the man lifted bodily and thrown clear over the wagon to fall helplessly on the rocky ground. The woman gave a low cry. "Oh, what a man!" Wash Gibbs, too, opened his eyes just in time to witness the unheard-of feat, and to see the bare-armed giant who performed it turn again, breathing heavily with his great exertion, but still ready to meet his big antagonist. The defeated bully rose from the ground. The other stepped forward to meet him, but without a word Gibbs climbed into the wagon and took up the reins. Before they could move, young Matt had the mules by the head. "You have forgotten something," he said quietly, pointing to the man on the ground who was still unconscious from his terrible fall. "That there's your property. Take it along. We ain't got no use for such as that on Fall Creek." Sullenly, Wash climbed down from the wagon and lifted his companion into it. As young Matt stood aside to let him go, the bully said, "I'll see you again for this." The young man only answered, "I reckon you'd better stay on Rorick, Wash Gibbs. You got more room there." And that's the end of Chapter 27. We'll continue next week with Chapter 28, What Pete Told Sammy. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.